There they are. Which one is your favorite out of these two?
Believe it or not, the overhead.
No.
And this picture, I didn't miss, and I'm very proud of it. I mean, there's strobe lit. I lit the ring. It's one shot. There's no sequence. But I was in a lucky seat, and I did my job. I did it well.
I kind of think we should have like beer in the game on in the background or something. That would be more fun. Well, at least we're not competing with the Yankee game. So I'm just going to start by introducing Neil because the format I thought would be fun for the evolution of sports photography is to talk about where it was, what stayed consistent, what got better, a little bit of, what's changed. And Neil has been shooting sports for 67 years, an incredible career. And
Since I was 2.
well, there's some math there. Boxing, baseball, football, hockey, tennis, golf, horse racing, Olympics, and so much more. He shot for major magazines like Life, Sports Illustrated, Time magazine, over 200 covers, and a little known fact that he was the only photographer that was the staff photographer for all three. Is that right?
At one time or another. Except, well, actually, because I know so many people are fact checkers these days. It's so easy. I always ask, you weren't on the staff of Life. Well, actually, hello? I was a half-Life staff photographer. On the last 2 years that they were in business, Time Magazine and Life Magazine shared my salary. So my name is in the masthead as a staff photographer in all 3 magazines.
And then recognizably, arguably, to me, the best photo taken of all time is the Ollie Liston photo. Beyond photography, little known fact also, a lot of people don't know that Neil is a filmmaker and he's made many films which inspired me to make my first film, and the author of 17 books and soon to be 18 books. So I thought we'd talk about, but just a little bit, I want to talk about what's changed for the worse. And I'm starting with the bad stuff because Neil and I don't live for what changed for the worse. There's a lot of photographers out there who say, oh, it used to be better. There were so many more opportunities. Things were better. It was so much better when it was film. And we don't live in that space. We live to move forward and what is better. But what has changed? What do you think as far as maybe what's changed for the worse? What would you say the grumblings would be?
Well, it's so common for as one gets older, you talk about the good old days. I like to think the good old days are right now. It is a very different business, though, however. Magazines are not, the magazines that I worked for, most of them are not publishing today anymore, but there are many, many other opportunities that didn't exist when I was shooting. What else has changed? Access is a big factor. I mean, it was a lot easier to get close to the biggest players in sports years ago. Today, when you want to photograph a major star, you need to deal with their lawyer, with their agent, with the publicist, with the team promotion manager, and probably the team photographer before you get close. That wasn't the case years ago. But for the most part, listen, I mean, we're here at B&H, so you're all camera owners, I assume. The cameras are better today for sports photography, much better. I mean, there's no comparison. I'm a Sony user. My go-to camera is the Sony A1. I use 2 or 3 of them on every assignment that I do, on every shoot that I do. And I don't think there's ever been a better camera for photographing sport than the A1, but that's my feeling.
One thing that has changed is when Neil was shooting back in, really one of your heroes would be Hy Peskin, a fun story of you used to be able to shoot on the field in foul territory during the game. And I think it was Hy Peskin, right, that ruined that for everybody, all of us. Well, I could still be in foul territory if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, you might be. Hy was one of my heroes. He was a great sports photographer, but he grew up in this neighborhood, in fact, right here, and he was a tough New York kid, And as far as he was concerned, there wasn't a rule ever written that shouldn't be broken if you're going to get a better picture. And there's a famous story, I believe it was in the mid 50s or early 50s, when photographers in the National League, the American League allowed photographers on the field for a number of years into the 70s, really, I think, 70s, maybe even early 80s. But Hy Peskin was shooting a game at Ebbets Field, I believe. It was a bunt situation. Player on second base. Hy was probably 25, 30 feet from the batter, who squared around to bunt, laid down a perfect bunt, and Hy and the batter ran parallel to each other up the first base line. Hy shooting with the speed graphic, I think then. He shot the play at first base. Ball went by the first baseman, so the runner from second decided to go to third, and it was a close play at third, and lo and behold, Hy Peskin, in order to get to third, had run right across the pitcher's mound, which is something you're not allowed to do. Ball gets by the third baseman, play at home plate, and Peskin ran right down the third base line with the runner and got the play at home plate, and he was very, very proud of this. But that was the last time any photographer was ever allowed on the field at a National League game.
So then what's the remain constant? Cameras change, access changes, magazines are really a thing of the past for so much, but sports photography, the basics of sports photography, focusing on what sports photography is, what it's always been, is capturing the athlete at peak moment. So could you just talk a little bit about that? Like, what is a great sports photo, and really, has that changed?
Well, it's the same elements as a great fashion photograph or a great scenic photograph. You need to put a number of things together. First is the action. You want to get a great moment in action. Secondly, you want to compose the frame right. Thirdly, you want to think about what the background's going to look like. I used to study the stadium I was going to shoot in every week. What time will the shadow be across the field? Is this a stadium? It's bitter cold in Minneapolis. They played outdoors on grass in those days, and you could see the breath coming out of every player. Is that that certainly would be the time to backlight something if it's cold enough. If it were a beautiful sunny day and not cold, you want to have the sun over your shoulder. You want to watch that. We watched that at Sports Illustrated. They didn't want to run a cigarette ad on the cover of the magazine, so you didn't shoot a double play where the billboard in left field was Chesterfield cigarettes or whatever, or Marlboro, whatever they were selling then. But it's something you just do automatically. Yeah, I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, but I was always concerned with what the opportunity might be.
But you do a lot of preparation for your shoots today. Neil is shooting actively now for a book that he's working on, and I mean, you're always working on a project. And if you're going to a horse race or you're going to a boxing match, you get there hours before. You did that back in the 60s and the 70s, and you do the same today. Your preparation really is the same. You're planning the shots that you want to make. I mean, isn't that all the same whether you're shooting with an A1 or you're shooting with a film camera?
Yes, except that, and I'm prefacing what I'm going to say now by saying I never met a modest, good photographer. If you meet a photographer who is genuinely modest, pictures probably aren't so good. And I was never that good. Naturally, I had to work hard, I had to study and do my work, and the end result would be good if I put in the time to learn what I was doing. But the other kind of photographer is just someone who's intuitive. It's just a God gift. My biggest competitor at Sports Illustrated was a photographer named Walter Yost, brilliant sports photographer. If Walter worked the same way I did, he would never have succeeded. And if I tried to work the way he did, he would arrive while the national anthem was being played. He forgot that you have to, every once in a while you had to change the batteries in your motor drive. He never did that, but he never missed. He took great pictures. I was the first person in the stadium. I had brand new batteries. My lenses were clean every time. I needed to do that. That's the way I work. Someone else said it's intuitive, it's a gift. I don't have that. It's the same as music. Someone who sits down at a piano and can start playing something automatically. Uh, Another person could spend 10 years taking lessons and never become a good pianist.
Yeah, for me, it's always preparation. I am definitely not someone who's walking in when the anthem's playing. I'm there hours before. What are the pictures I want to make? What is the story I want to tell? The research happens before I even get there. And I know the same for you. I mean, you tell me, oh, I'm going to this race on Saturday. There's a picture I want to make. He's researching on the internet. Before that, it was watching a race on TV and then seeing an angle that you want to shoot. And all of that preparation enables you to make better pictures. And get the shots that you want to make.
This weekend I shot, my new book is going to be on horses, polo, equestrian, steeplechase, harness racing, and mainly flat racing. But there was a great equestrian 3-day event. It was hotter than hell this weekend, but I went on Friday so that I could circle the place and see where the jumps are going to be. Even though they change them, I had a pretty good idea where the light would be, because I never shot in this particular setting before. And the payoff was that by Saturday and Sunday I got much better pictures because of the preparation I did on Friday.
And where you want to set your remotes up and what lens you want to use. And then when you're prepared that way, I mean, you make your pictures more consistently and make better pictures.
Well, they're not accidents.
We all can't be Walter.
No. And again, he couldn't be me. He and I have had this conversation, and he agrees with me. I mean, if Walter tried to approach an assignment the way I had to approach mine, I don't think he would have been very successful.
So what's gotten better? With modern day cameras and all the new technology that's happening, how has that changed your sports photography today? What's better for you?
It's taken in a very big way. It's taken away the worrying part of an assignment. The two things that we worried about when I was shooting film cameras was getting the exposure right, and you had to be pretty damn, certainly with color, with films like Kodachrome, which had beautiful resolution, but you really had no latitude. If you were more than a quarter of a stop away from being perfect, the art director, the production people would say this isn't going to reproduce very well. The cameras today, the digital cameras today are so good, and I mean, first they have tremendous latitude, so you really don't worry about exposure. If you're off, generally speaking, you're going to be able to fix it
and you can see real time if you're off.
But the biggest thing is not the exposure for sports photography. Sports photography, certainly baseball and football and hockey and less basketball and boxing are exceptions, but most of these, the main lens, the two lenses I used most when I was shooting for Sports Illustrated was my 600 millimeter and my 400 millimeter. That's what you shoot baseball and football and with. And there, the focus, we used to have to focus the lens, you didn't press the auto, you didn't get drunk the night before the game, even though we were all in the bar having fun, but you had to be sober and awake and clear-eyed. Today you can't get drunk, and autofocus taken away the two things I worried about was my exposure and my focus. And you couldn't see on the back of the camera whether or not you were hitting the focus right. So you had to wait until the film was processed to see if you had what you thought was a good day. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were just that little bit out of focus, which makes the picture not very appealing.
And not worrying about autofocus just takes such a big burden. Like you said, you're not worried about it. I mean, the A1 autofocus, the A93 autofocus,
spectacular.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now you're spending your time framing and composing, being able to move. How do you want to frame the shot? You're spending so much time creating a picture instead of worrying about it being in focus.
I'm not an
and
expert.
that's not just from the 60s. That's from just a few years ago, the difference. I mean,
I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in this, but I would say the quality of today's sports pictures, it's just so much better. I don't even know what 60 megapixels mean, or 50 megapixels, but I do know that I don't have to pack the frame the way it was. Even with good film films like Kodachrome, which was so good. You're not blowing up a small part of the film. You better pack the frame with the image you want to get.
Right.
With today's cameras, they're so good. I mean, I, I wish I'd had one of these
I mean,
30
and
years
also
ago.
low light situation. Now, granted, arenas and fields are much brighter than they used to be. Lighting is much better, but also the cameras have gotten much better. I mean, it used to be everybody wanted to just shoot a day game for baseball, night games, and it wasn't that long ago where everybody was stayed away from night games. And now, I mean, you want to shoot a night game. You want to get away from the heavy, harsh shadows
Yeah.
of a 1 o'clock game. And the night games with, I mean, ISO is not an issue anymore.
Well,
And it's tremendous.
whoever heard of 6400 ISO? I mean, 6400, 64,000, I forgot. I shot boxing with, 600 millimeter lens, quite away from ringside. 6400 ISO, they're perfect. I mean, with big double truck in the book, looked great.
Yeah, being able to pump up your ISO is
Right.
such a big difference in the cameras now that we're using. But it still goes back to a great picture is still the same. It's the same in the 50s, the 60s, today. It'll be the same tomorrow. Frame and composed well, filling your frame, capturing the athlete at their peak moment. All of that is the same. But now we just have better tools to make it happen.
For sure.
Yeah. Also about learning and collaborating, I want to move on to today, how we can learn. I mean, we certainly didn't have the B&H event space. Like, how did you learn as a photographer back in the day? What was your research like? Did you have mentors, or you certainly can't get on YouTube?
Well, I grew up on the Lower East Side, right below the Williamsburg Bridge of Manhattan, and it was a rough neighborhood. There was beginning of drugs and crime, and so there were things that were set up for after school, and the one I went to was a Henry Street Settlement, and they had programs. One could learn to play an instrument, one could learn, you certainly had a gym where there was basketball, and they actually taught boxing, believe it or not, I remember. But they had a great camera club, and your camera, and it was a hobby. For me, it was but they also made it available to kids that had no money. We had no money. My family certainly couldn't afford B&H or anything like B&H. And it was just, to me, it was a way of doing something. I wasn't about to become a gang member on the streets, but the fact is that it kept you off the streets and kept you out of trouble, and I fell for it. I really got to like it. So the more I liked it, the more.
But the learning and networking today, wouldn't you say there's just so much more, I mean, accessible information? I mean, this is free, YouTube, the Sony Alpha Universe, all you have to do is sign up and there's just so much available for photographers.
But I don't think it's changed at all. I mean, what you learn by taking pictures, and if you take pictures and to this day, I've edited my own pictures always, unless I was traveling, and when we were working for the magazine, you could be on the road for a 4-game series in San Francisco or in LA, and you had to ship the film back every day. I couldn't edit the film that was sent back. But when I was in the office, I edited my own pictures. And and the reason I did it was because you learn from the mistakes. You thought something looked terrific when you shot it, and it comes out when you see the film, it could have been better. And here's what I won't make the same mistake. That's the same thing today as it was
That's
back
true.
then. I mean,
in some ways, looking at the back of your camera gives you a false sense of security. Sometimes you think you have something, what you think you have, and then sometimes you're surprised.
Yeah, but you can make an instant edit, and you can say, wow, the next time they jump over that hurdle, like I was doing this weekend,
Sure.
I'm gonna open it up a little bit wider. It's gonna be a better picture with some more background, some more ambiance to it.
Being able to look on the back of your camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to getting the film a week later and saying,
And knowing that you got what you got in focus.
right. So what about going into the mindset of sports, prepping for your shoot? You know, you say, or you've said to me, sports photography is a lot about luck.
Oh, that goes back to the modesty thing I was talking about. You always seem so modest when you talk about luck. I can give you the best example I can possibly give you is my picture of Ali enlisted, and it's very simple. The photographer between Sports Illustrated had two ringside seats on the apron, and the photographer between Muhammad Ali's legs is a bald, elderly guy named, his name was Herb Schaffman. He was a great boxing photographer. He took one of the most famous boxing pictures, Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott. It's called a rubber face. It's the punch landing and the face is contorted because it's just gotten smashed by a right hand of Marciano's. And but that night in Lewiston, Maine, he was sitting on the ring opposite me. Now that had nothing to do with anything, any move. I didn't choose my seat. Sports Illustrated had two seats. Herbie got one of them. I got the other one. He wasn't lucky. He was on the wrong side. You've got the picture of Secretariat there winning the Belmont, another one of my better known pictures. And that's full frame. That's not a crop frame. Who knew the jockey was going to look over at me? To this day, I get asked, did I set that up? I didn't set it up. What I found out later, and I actually found it out by talking to Turcotte, who was Ron Turcotte was the jockey. He had set records in the first two races of the Triple Crown, the Derby, Kentucky Derby, and the Preakness, and he was eager to break the record. And his records still stand today, 50 years later. But he was on record pace, he thought, and behind the direction, right behind me, was the tote board where you see the odds coming up, and they have a teletimer on it. So he was looking to see how fast he was going, because no point in abusing the horse. If he wasn't going fast enough to break the record, he was so far ahead, he wasn't going to lose at that point. He would have just slowed the horse down a little bit so the horses get injured. But that was luck. He looked right over at me, and that makes the picture.
Yeah, luck, but is it really luck?
Well,
I mean, come on. I mean, luck, sure, but a lot more than luck. It's knowing the sport.
It's knowing the sport, and your job is not to miss when you get lucky. That's the key to the whole thing. Whether you're shooting single shot with strobe lights, or that's a sequence camera, not 20 frames like our A1s are, or 30 frames. 30 frames. I never counted them. But the point is that you got to be in the right place at the right time, and your job is not to miss when things happen right for you. And I didn't miss in this instance, and I certainly didn't miss.
No, but the right place and the right time, that's not luck, that's knowledge.
But this terrific boxing photographer right between Ali's legs, what he's getting is a picture of Ali's rear end. Well,
that's bad luck.
Yeah, real
but
bad
the
luck.
knowledge, what about the knowledge of the sport? Can you talk about that? I mean, the more you know the sport, the more you shoot the sport, the more consistently you're making your pictures.
That's a double-edged sword, too. There's two sides to that story. There was a great photographer at Life magazine, George Silk, was a New Zealander. And I like to tell this story, I'm paraphrasing.
Okay, well, I'm not going to agree with you, but
I'm paraphrasing it. Fine, we don't always agree. I'm paraphrasing
Don't do this on YouTube.
but George Silk was one of the great life photographers. After World War II, he moved to America. He covered some of the battles in World War II, when in Japan he was there, in Manila and in Iwo Jima, and he did all of those horrible battles that he photographed. And when he came back here, he did all sorts of things. He was a wonderful photographer, but Life magazine decided to put him in sports, to be the sports photographer for Life magazine. Well, he had never seen a baseball game. He had no interest in an American football game. And I'll tell you two quick pictures he took. I always joke about this. If he came over to you and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this baseball game," when that guy with the club swings, what happens next? And you told him, now we all know that he runs to first base, which is on your right hand. If we told George Silk he runs to the left, which would be third base, and of course isn't what you do, George would have thought that was great and figured out a way to take a great picture of it. He would have failed at getting the news. His editor wouldn't have been very happy. But the fact is, he did things differently, the result were a number of pictures. He did a very famous gatefold cover on the Baltimore Colts kicking off, and he did it in a way with a remote camera that no American photographer who knew the game ever thought about. But the best example, seventh game of the 1960 World Series. George hated the crowds. There's so many people in the crusher. George is assigned, Pittsburgh Pirates are playing the New York Yankees, Game 7 of the World Series. They assigned George to this. He looks the place over. He was there for the first few games. He didn't want to have anything to do with the crowd in the stadium. He sees there's a tall building. It's I think it's the library at University of Pittsburgh Library that looks right down on the field. He wasn't even in the stadium. He had a beer, he had a hot dog or whatever. He was upstairs out of the stadium and took one of the great baseball pictures in history. Now, no American photographer. I was
Okay,
there. I wanted to be
right.
in the stadium.
I'll give you that. I think that does fall under when you're seeing something new for the first time.
Exactly.
You see it with these fresh eyes, and you can make these pictures that maybe you wouldn't make if something was as familiar to you. It's like going to Cuba for the first time. You see so much, you see it differently. You know, if you're in New York and you're not from New York, you see it differently and you see pictures. So I'll give him that. But for sports photography, the more you know the sport, the more consistently you're going to make your pictures. Why? Because athletes repeat themselves, right? They do the same thing over and over again. They throw the ball the same way, they kick the ball the same way, they catch the ball the same way. So the more you know the sport, the more consistently you'll make your pictures. The more you know that athlete, the more consistently you're going to make pictures of that athlete. The more you know the stadium or the arena that you're shooting in, you know your backgrounds, you know which angle, you know where the lights are, you know what you want to make.
Oh,
the more you know the sport.
Definitely true.
Yeah.
And but we were also photojournalists. I mean, we're working for essentially covering a news event, and you have to have the winning. This summer, I took a picture at Saratoga Racetrack that is easily the best shot I took all year at flat racing. It happens to be the very last horse in the race, all four hooves off the ground, flying with dirt flying on and the whole grandstand behind. But that horse was 8th out of 8 horses, and he happened to be way back. There was a big gap, so it was all by himself except for the tail of the horse that was in front of him. Well, if I took that picture for Sports Illustrated at the Kentucky Derby when I was shooting, I would have been fired. They would have said, yeah, that's a lovely picture, Neil, but we're not a museum. Where's the winning horse? You somehow missed the winner.
Right, you can't miss the winner.
Yeah, we were journalists, so we do have to know the sport.
Right,
yes.
certainly. Yeah. If you have a beautiful shot of the building and the horse, no picture of the horse winning, not so much. But
Well,
that we all miss. I mean, people say, oh, the missing, you say try not to miss. What happens with failure? How do you handle failure? You're in the middle of a game, you missed a great play, you missed a winning touchdown. You miss a touchdown during the game. How do you handle that as a photographer?
Well, you're not happy, that's for sure. But more important, it's your batting average really that matters. I mean, no one is perfect every time. You're all every one of us is going to have a bad day. But the fewer bad days you have, the more successful you are at getting assignments. Certainly at a magazine like Sports Illustrated, they wanted good pictures. They didn't want to hear excuses. Well, I had a bad day today, Chief.
Right.
So
don't miss. Just don't miss.
The less you miss, the more successful you are.
True. But if you do miss, and we all miss, I mean, to me, it's like the athlete, right? We're supposed to be at the top of our game, not missing, but we miss. And when we do miss, I think it's important to throw it away like the athlete throws it away. Because if you dwell on that miss, right, I missed that play, or worse, you're looking at the back of your camera, wishing you got something that you didn't get, looking at the other photographers who are smiling because they got it and you didn't, you're going to miss the next one. So really, it's letting go of that, just like the athlete has to let go when he missed that ball or he missed that play or he missed that, whatever it is, you got to let go. It really is the mental game as well of the athlete and the mental game of the photographer is letting go as quickly as possible and getting the next one as quickly as possible. Because there's nothing better than having a great photo in the can. You know, when you get that first one, it feels so good, and then it seems like the rest of your day goes really well and the rest of your shoot. It's the same thing. Letting go of that mistake and throwing it in the garbage and moving on, I think is a important part of the mental game.
You can't redo it. You're exactly right. You have one chance, and you missed it. You missed it. It's over. Think I won't miss the next one.
Do you have, well, I was going to say, any examples of having deep knowledge of the sport where if you don't know something about a sport, you won't get it? Any sport, football, horse racing, boxing. Is there an example you could give? You don't have to.
Well, I mean, I've shot sports that I didn't know at all, and I took advantage of that fact. Is that what you're getting at? I mean, I think that's.
Well, it's more like, okay, I'll go to baseball because that's where I live. You know, there's a man on second, a man on first. There's no outs. There's one out. Let's say the Yankees are up, and you're shooting. You're pointing your camera towards home plate, right? Because you know, okay, there's a play at the plate. You know, it's
Right.
knowing the sport. I want to talk about setting yourself apart because you have a career of shooting so much, but yet you also kind of hitched your wagon to one particular athlete and made a career of that. Would you say that Ali set you apart in some way? Like, what do sports photographers, what should they do to set themselves apart?
Well, you know, Ali liked to call himself the greatest, and I'm still a fan. So I mean, I believe he was the greatest. But what he was greatest at was not only his boxing skill, because for my money, and one can argue in sports, there's great argument who the best was at anything else. I think Muhammad Ali was the greatest athlete of all time. Had he played in the NFL, I think he would have been a great running back. He would have been Jimmy Brown or O.J. Simpson. Had he played baseball, I think he would have been Aaron Judge today. He was just a magnificent athlete. But what he was to me and to others, he was God's gift to any journalist, whether you were a writer, commentator, artist like Leroy Neiman was, or a photographer. He made you look good. I mean, we fell in love with Ali because I was a young guy. I wanted to impress my boss. My boss, I'd come back with good pictures. The picture editor would think, wow, this kid Leifer, he's pretty good. If you missed with Ali, you might as well have found another profession because he would give you more time. And you didn't have to be working for Life magazine or Sports Illustrated. I watched Ali with high school kids. First he'd poke fun at them, he'd pick on them, and they'd get nervous. But then he'd give a kid 10 minutes in the gym when he's just finished the workout and he really wants to jump in the shower or whatever. And with me, for years he'd do had the same line with me. He said, all right, Neil, last time you took too long. You took advantage of me. How much time you need today? I'd say 20 minutes. He would say, you got 5. And 45 minutes or sometimes an hour later, he was suggesting new poses.
Is that right?
You know, you had to look good with him. So if for no other reason than I wanted to be successful, Muhammad made everybody that was lucky enough to work with him a success. Easily. If you missed with him, you might as well find another job.
Would you recommend that as a path for somebody? Obviously, you're taking a chance, like starting with a young athlete, a young basketball player, somebody unknown, a kid in college, starting with them and trying to follow them through their career and building a relationship with them.
Well, first off, how many people have 60-year careers? Ali was around for 55, 60 years. You know.
So were you.
And yeah, but I wasn't playing in a sport where you had to stay at a certain level. Well,
Sure.
maybe I was. I don't know, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think there'll ever be anybody like him again. So he was one of a kind, and I mean, you're not going to find that in another subject. I don't think a young photographer today could hitch his wagon onto somebody, even if that person's going to last. You can personality and how just how nice you are to the people you got to work with, and when you understand they have a job to do as well. I think that manners, sometimes in the old days, it was really nice to be able to make a print and give them a print. You come back two weeks after you shot a series of pictures of a particular baseball player, football. They'd love it if you showed up with an 8 by 10 or 11 by 14 print and said, "I thought you might like to have this. This is one of the pictures I got last week." The next time you came back, they were more likely to cooperate.
But you also did something that's so popular today, but it wasn't that popular back then, is you were storytelling with him. It was more than just the action. It was, I mean, we can all shoot the action, and we can get proficient at the action. And when I'm shooting action, I might be shooting it with 20 or 30 or 40 photographers, and we're all making the same pictures, doing something different outside the ring for boxing, or for me, it's my grassroots baseball and telling stories. And I mean, now there's so much behind the scenes, but you were doing behind the scenes when really behind the scenes wasn't that popular. I mean, you had a relationship with him outside of shooting him boxing, is that right? I mean,
Well, yeah,
there were
but
other moments. I mean, I have one of Diana Ross and on my wall with Muhammad Ali that was not in a boxing ring.
no, but it was the Rolls Royce I was shooting. It was
It was a fabulous car.
right there with
Yeah.
him. But no, but I mean, you just don't know. Well, every assignment is different. A lot of my assignments were not to do the news action of the fight with Ali. They were to get, when he broke his jaw, when Ken Norton broke his jaw, I spent a day at home, and he was known as a Louisville Lip because he talked more than I do. And was, teeth were wired. I spent a day, and there were some of the most enjoyable pictures I took. I took him diapering his baby boy. And believe me, he had no idea what you do with the diaper. But he knew it would make good pictures. He kept stabbing the kid. The kid was crying. They had diaper pins in those days. And I finally I thought he was going to kill his son. So I said, okay. They called his wife in to finish the diaper job. But those pictures were important behind the scenes, and they still are.
I mean, him holding his baby, all the pictures that you have of behind the scenes of Muhammad Ali over the years are really priceless. They're my favorite pictures in that book.
It's interesting. It's interesting because my pictures of Ali, of course, I'm very proud of. But my best behind the scenes picture ever is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson fights
Mike Tyson with the baby.
fights Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight championship, and he got his brains beaten out. I mean, Lennox Lewis just beat him real easily. The fight was stopped. He knocked him down a couple of times, but they stopped the fight. And I had a very good relationship with Mike Tyson, a really good relationship. And he allowed me in the dressing room before the fight, and he allowed me in after the fight, long before the press were allowed in. In fact, they threw everybody out, including the television camera, and I was in there. And Mike had a very bad cut over his eye, and they stitched his eye up in there, and he asked one of his people to get his son. I didn't even know he had a new son. It was an infant, little guy about that big, and they hand Mike, he's got a towel around himself. He had just had his eye stitched up, and he sits in the corner of the room facing the corner by himself, and there was just enough room to get a little chair in. I was a lot skinnier then than I am now, and I just got right. We never had a word of conversation. I think if I'd broken the mood, and he's holding his baby, and it is one of the best. Sports Illustrated ran the picture 2 pages. It was better than any picture I got at the fight, and I would go as far as to say it was a better picture than any other picture anybody got at that fight. That picture is a way to remember that fight.
It's a beautiful picture. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. So I have a little closing that I want to talk about with Muhammad Ali in particular, but great sports moments are remembered through history because of great photographers. Every iconic moment is immortalized by the photographer capturing the athlete at their peak moment. The athlete's glory and the photographer's skill come together in a single, unforgettable image. The athlete and the photographer are forever paired. I mean, wouldn't you agree that when those moments happen, the Olympic moments, the big moments, there's so many examples, But my favorite Neil Leifer forever is linked to the Ali standing over Liston, if we got that photo somewhere up there. There they are. Which one is your favorite out of these two?
Believe it or not, the overhead.
No.
And it's the one picture that
Oh,
hangs.
don't say
But the reason is different again. And I'm going back. I mean, this is the photographer I was talking about. This picture, I didn't miss, and I'm very proud of it. I mean, there's strobe lit. I lit the ring. It's one shot. There's no sequence. But I was in a lucky seat, and I did my job. I did it well. That picture was not luck. That was from my brain. I figured that out. It could never have been done before. It can never be done again because the canvas today is like a tattooed canvas. I mean, it's got the hotel that the fight is going to be at, the network that is televising it, the promoter. It's not simply a clean canvas with no copy, no writing on it. Everything's symmetrical, which isn't the way it looks today. The ring is symmetrical, but nothing else would be. I planned that picture. It could never have been done before. It was a new arena. And it came from my head. It was what I thought about, and I hang it. It's been hanging in my house. I took the picture in 1966, and I think I first had it print up on the wall in '67, and it's still there in my living room.
I'd like to there's a lot of sports photographers in this audience, and I know they got questions for you, so I'd like to give us some time to answer those questions, because to me, sorry, go ahead, Neil.
I want to say one thing. We've done a lot of talking about me. I don't know how many of you, if you're not familiar with Jean's work, I became interested in her work because I don't think there's a tougher sport to photo. Of the major sports in America, baseball is easily the toughest. The reason being that half the time nothing happens. You get a good pitcher's duel, how many times are you going to shoot the pitcher? And I started noticing Jean's pictures. And we had a couple of good baseball. Baseball was never my strong suit. I'd fall asleep by the third inning of a pitcher's
My
duel.
favorite baseball book is Neil's baseball book, by the way. So he's
I
maybe
shot
shot a
lot of
little
baseball. I shot a lot of baseball, but I know how hard it is to photograph. And Jean, the kind of moment we just talked about with Mike Tyson and his baby, Jean does these incredible baseball pictures when nothing happens. I mean, and I don't know how you do that, but I'm not very good at that. And I marvel at it. There's a couple of, we have a friend in San Francisco, Brad, who's got the same idea. Walter Yost also was very good.
Yeah.
But it's the hardest sport to photograph, and her pictures are magnificent of it. And I wish I were that good at baseball.
My agent, Neil Leifer. It's a good guy to have. But I'd love to open it up to questions, because I have friends here, and yep.
Well, yeah, exposure. I mean, when the strobe lights were used, this was exactly the same as doing a fashion shoot for Vogue or Harper's. You figure out where you hope the action's going to have. You're photographing a black athlete against the dark background. You want to backlight him, so he's going to jump out of it. That also accentuates the muscle tone. And then you hope that the moment that matters is going to happen right where you wanted it to, in this instance it did. The other picture was also...
Well, when he shot that with a Sony A1 II, and
yeah, it was secret.
It was before it came out. He was part of the test.
This was taken with a Rolleiflex, wide-angle Rolleiflex. The other was a remote camera with a motorized Hasselblad, 80 feet over the ring.
Yeah.
And I'm in the blue shirt, 9 o'clock. Up here would be 10 o'clock. Leaning on the canvas with.
Right. And it's really, to me, this is such the evolution of photography, because we have these modern day cameras that are so fabulous and shoot 100 frames per second, 30 frames per second, whatever we have. But the principles of sports photography is really the same. Yeah.
Was there something that you saw in a previous fight or a previous photographer that you was like, let me try it out, or it was just
This is
that
very.
pure instinct?
Well, it's a very good question because that was something special. The fight took place in the Houston Astrodome, which was called at the eighth wonder of the world at the time. I had worked for Sports Illustrated. I'd spent 5 or 6 trips to Houston. I worked on the construction of this new stadium when they were building it. And one of the things I found out, boxing to this day, the ring is usually lit with lights maybe 20 feet over the ring, straight down for television, so television cameras, for natural light photography. But 20 feet or 25 feet over the ring is about as high as the ring lights, as low as the ring lights ever got. But the Astrodome, what they had a gondola. It was the size of this room. It was 70 or 80 feet across, 60, 60, 70, 80 feet across, and it had all the lighting rigged on it. It was on a rheostat. You could like a dimmer. But they could bring it. It was an elevator. They could bring it right down to the floor, so you could mount the camera, and then put it up 200 plus feet up to the top of the Astrodome, and light something below. They could light a rock concert with it. They could light a political convention. They could light a rodeo, whatever they wanted. But for boxing, the stadium had 50,000 seats. Well, the $5 seats in the upper deck, when you have something 80 feet across, would have been obscured. You would have cut half the ring off. You can't have 20,000 people in the upper deck seeing only half the ring.
Right.
So they had to put it up higher. As soon as I saw that, I realized this was possible. Overhead cameras, boxing goes back to the 40s. They would put a remote camera, but you always put it over the ring corner so you could look down. Because if you put it in the middle of the ring, with the exception of a fisheye lens, you never could get the whole ring from 20 feet up. And then with the fisheye, you got what looked like a basketball rather than a square ring. But when you're 80 feet up, you could do this. And I figured that out when I was working on some of during the construction of the stadium. When I saw this thing, I said, wow, this could be a possible way to do something different with boxing.
But that's exactly goes back to planning
Yeah.
and researching and figuring things out and planning your shots. That doesn't just happen if you show up when the anthem is playing.
No.
That happens because you've been there, you know the sport, you know the arena, you know what you want to do, and you have the experience.
I hope that would happen, that kind of knockdown, that the guy on the canvas would be looking up at me and Ali's on his way to the other corner. Those are things I knew. I knew that the champ has to go back to the neutral corner, whoever scores the knockdown. I waited a second or two just so they'd fill the ring rather than composition-wise.
You work hard for your luck.
This one, yes.
Most of them, really. Other questions?
If we could stay on that, I just kind of want to piggyback on that. What was the layover in time to get another shot? Like, you didn't get the moment. How long would it take to get another shot off?
Now, that's another thing. One of the questions that Gene asked real early, and I didn't address it with this thing. The magazine spent a lot of money. I mean, we had to get to light a ring from 80 feet up and not get a ghost image. The reason I was using a Hasselblad more than anything else was because you needed 3 or 4 stops. You had an exposure there. Otherwise, you're going to get a ghost image from the natural light image. And what I did was, I'm sorry, refresh me.
Well, just like, what's the timing? You take that shot, how long do you wait for the next one?
We sent a Ryder truck down. That's the reason I mentioned how much money they spent. A Ryder truck, the condensers that the strobes were connected, there were 4 strobes up in the gondola, and the condensers were 80 pounds each. With that much power, it took, I think it was, if I remember, it was at least 3 seconds and I think 4 seconds before the lights were recharged. Same thing with this was 3 seconds or so. You had to count to yourself because if you press the button too soon, you'd get a black frame because you wouldn't have any synchronization between the lights and the film.
Have you ever submitted a photo that you just hated, but it became the greatest picture?
That I hated, no, but again, I was employed by the magazine. Now, you're not submitting things. They're entitled to run whatever they want. And, you know, I mean, even on the books, you know, I love the art director I'm working with, but I mean, sometimes they want to do things, and the man that owns the company, my publisher is Tasha, and if Benedict Tasha wants to run a picture and I don't like the picture, tough luck. It's his company, you know. I try not to show them any pictures that I don't like.
That's the key, is right. And in my early days of shooting for newspapers, I would send my pictures in, then would see what they're going to run, and then I would call and complain that they didn't run the right picture. And I'd say, oh, I can't believe they ran this. Why didn't they run that? And finally, a very smart editor said something very simple to me and said, don't send it if you don't want them to run it. And it just seemed so simple. So it's really about the editing and what you're proud of, and send what you're proud of, and it's all about the editing. So, yeah.
It looks like the photos, even with the zoom lens, have a big depth of field. Would that be right? These photos look like they have a big depth of field even with the zoom lens.
Oh, your depth of field with your lenses back in the day.
With the long lenses, not much, very little, as I said, and you had to be, you know, for a magazine like Sports Illustrated, they wanted the pictures to be sharp. Depth of field, again, focus and exposure were something every photographer. I was good. I think I was very good technically, but I always worried maybe I'm a little too underexposed or too overexposed today. Maybe I missed some. And the focus with the 600 millimeter lens, and running back, coming around, or a pass receiver, you never know. You never knew if you really got it. You think you got it. It felt good, but it's over. You can't see it till the film is hanging in the lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, students of the craft and also just the general audience tends to pair you with these two images here. Could you possibly tell us about one other image that's actually true to you, a bit more true to you, that you want to, let us know, and something we should look at besides
Wow.
these two images?
I mean, you know, I did the cover when Green Bay Packers won their second Super Bowl, the second championships with Vince Lombardi, 5 years before the Super Bowl, first Super Bowl was played. I got the cover of him being carried off the field that I think was the perfect picture of that kind of moment. You see, you know, today they dump a bucket of Gatorade on the coach, but in those days they carried him off the field, and I managed to be right in front of him, no further than his table, with a 24 millimeter lens to be exact, and they ran. It was a perfect cover. Got a picture of Joe Namath that I'm very proud of. I mean, there are things like that. And often, I mean, one of my best covers is not a great picture at all, but I went to the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, and I got the cover of the magazine with the torchbearer coming in. They used to have these, it was a lot simpler than what they do today. One torchbearer would run around the stadium and then run all the way up to light. And that picture, it's a snapshot, but it's a good snapshot. And it's a memory I'll always have. I was 75 feet or so from the Emperor of Japan. I was in an aisle, crouched down, and I shot this torchbearer coming, and I love that picture.
For both of you, is there any photo that still stands out in your mind, like the one that something was off, somebody walked in the way, or one that you missed that still haunts you to this day?
I got a good one. I don't
Yeah,
think-
what do you have?
I have a good one. David Burnett took a picture that I wish I had taken. I was working for Time magazine in Los Angeles during the '84 Olympics, and the big race was going to be Zola Budd and Mary Decker. And I was given the position at the finish line, but if I had wanted to change, I thought because the light was so good at the third turn, I thought I should be there. And of course, that's where Zola Budd and tripped Mary Decker. And it's one of the most famous sports pictures ever. And I had thought about it. I almost made the decision to go to that corner of the stadium and didn't. I wish I had.
That is a good one. I think for me, my early moments of shooting big games and being wound up and not as prepared, and that's when really preparation became like the thing that calmed me down and made my pictures. So I had these big moments available to me and didn't capture them the way I wanted to because I didn't have a plan especially at the end of the game when the celebration is happening. And now, I know I'm never going to miss a shot at the end of any game because I'm always going to be prepared and always have my plan. And I think that it's really, for me, so much about preparation over and over and over again.
One of the things I found out about Jean a long time ago, and she called, I always was proud of the fact that I could get the film back to New York real quick. I had the great escape after the game is over when the whole crowd. So Jean may have a plan for the end of the game, but she's a genius at getting out of the stadium.
It is part of the plan. You have to have an exit strategy. So I know what my last shot is going to be, and there's always somebody or something waiting for me outside to get me away from the stadium faster than lightning. Yeah, it is part of the plan. So.
Was there a moment, or is there something like a sporting event or a moment that you captured that kind of makes you realize, okay, I belong here, I'm no longer uncomfortable, or do you still get the nerves?
I still get the nerves for sure, but I feel I mean, again, it goes back to preparation. So I don't feel like I know I'm prepared. What pictures I want to make, what position I want to be in, what lenses I want to use. For me, it's really very methodical. It's almost boring, but it makes the pictures for me on a very consistent basis. Of course, you're going to be surprised. It's still photojournalism and you have to be ready. But when you're really prepared, I think it's so easy then to pivot to that next moment. So I think that's really more for me. Probably the harder part for me was letting go of, in order to make special pictures, you have to take chances. And that took me a while to get comfortable with, instead of just staying in the same place and being sure I'm going to always get the next Aaron Judge home run, the next Aaron Judge home run. What if I move over here? What if I try something else? Because no risk, no return. Same spot, same picture. So you have to be willing to let go and accept that you're going to miss the Aaron Judge home run if you go up to the top of Yankee Stadium and try to make something beautiful. Or you may go to another building, to a rooftop. Or maybe you're going to try this position and make one special picture, but you have to accept you're going to miss these other ones. And that's really what I want it to be anyway. I'm trying not to make 200 mediocre pictures. I'd like to try, and many times fail, to make one special one. And that's what it's about for me now, is trying to make that one special picture, which of course doesn't happen very often. Yeah.
Like feel when you like mentally prepared, and then just missing that moment that you're like, shoot, I wish I could have taken that shot.
Oh, when you see special pictures, certainly you see what other people are doing, and like that's to me like such great about research, and the good part of social media is you're seeing these special pictures and you realize if you don't move and you don't make changes, you're never going to. We can all capture the action, I mean, what is so special about an Aaron Judge home run when 30 other people are taking the same picture? So what else could you do? Now, if your job is to get that home run and you're working for AP or Getty, you better get it or else you're not going to make, your next one. But if you have the opportunity to make something special, taking that chance is a big deal. I mean, and for me, it was actually at Yankee Stadium, and it was beautiful light, and it was, okay, I'm going to leave my photo position, and I'm going to go up and try to make something different and make a picture that nobody else maybe is making that day. And, that requires risk and chance and failure. But failure that I'm willing to take to try to make something special. Yeah.
Sunset shot? Is that the sunset shot?
Yeah, I love my Yankee Stadium. So yeah, because it's a pivotal moment for me of, yes, I moved and I made something different, and and then that's how I like to think about sports photography now, is what can I make? And I may just sit at a game, if it's a regular season game, and try to make one picture the whole game that I haven't made before, and sometimes fail. And that is frustrating, but it's also part of it. And then when you make it, it feels so good. So, yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. So when you're planning for a shoot or a game, and you're thinking about the story that you're going to tell, like what's the narrative? What's the theme that you kind of go through and play out?
Well, that's like up to you, right? What is the story I want to tell? What are the pictures I want to make? What I want to make? What is the message I want to convey? That goes back to your planning before you even get there. You know, okay, is it a story about a certain player? And I'm going to stay on that. If it's going to be about that player, I'm going to try to get that player in the locker room, warming up, doing whatever, sitting on the bench. Before, after, I'm going to tell that story all the way through and follow that player and try to make something special of that player for that day, and look and research before I even get there what pictures have been made of him or her, what can I do differently. So my story and the story I want to tell is before I even get there. Now, there might be, we're back to photojournalism, there might be a story unfolding. If a new story is unfolding, I'm not going to say, oh, no, I'm not getting that. I've got this story over here. Something amazing's happening. Of course, we're pivoting and trying to capture, you know, whatever's happening in front of us. But the narrative and the story and the, you know, that's before I even get to the game, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
What would you guys consider to be the best type of shot that you can get? Is it an action shot in the middle of a play, or is it the moment after it really happens, like player reaction and things like that?
I mean, it's really, you know, all of the above. So it's, for me, sports photography is action and then reaction. Action, reaction of the player who made the action. Action, reaction of his teammates. Action, reaction of the fans. Action, reaction of the other team. What reaction do you want to get? Action, reaction. So there's plenty of reaction after the action. You can get both if you're thinking about it. Maybe it's the action, and then of course these players celebrate immediately for their own action. Or maybe you want to see the other team and their reaction. So it's action and reaction always. I want both. I don't want one or the other. I want the athlete at their peak moment every single time. And that's why knowing the sport and what that peak moment is. That ballerina shot up there, that was so hard for me because I don't know what the peak moment is of a ballerina. I looked at so many ballerina shots. Is their toe supposed to be this way? Is their hand supposed to be like this? Or is it supposed to be like this? Like, what is the right shot for that ballerina? It took me forever because I don't know that sport. I'm calling it a sport. But when you know the sport, you know what the peak moment is. And of course, at 30 frames per second, if you're paying attention, you have a pretty good chance of capturing the athlete at peak moment. But then, what is the reaction you want to get? You go right to that. Action, reaction. And that's quick. And if you already know, I want to get the other bench, I want to get that player, you know what you want to, maybe I want to get the fans. If you're, you know, at Yankee Stadium and Aaron Judge hits the home run and you want the fans, you can swing over to the fans pretty quickly. Or maybe there's a particular fan that you've been paying attention to. Now you want to get the reaction of that fan. So then the rest of sports photography is telling the story around that. Action, reaction, fan shots, and then of course there's celebration. There's always a celebration. What is the celebration you want to get? If it's a baseball game, by the 7th inning, I'm thinking about where's the game going to end? Who most likely is going to win? What position do I want to be in? Who do I want to capture celebrating at the end of this game? Who was the game about? You know, what action is most important? Who's the star of that game? Maybe that's who I'm going to focus on. Or maybe it's just a player who I know is going to give me great celebration, who always does a special leap or whatever they do. And that's who I'm going. But I know where I'm going to be by the 7th inning. Now, of course, the game could change and then I've got to change. But I'm paying attention and I'm already formulating my plan of what celebration I want to capture. So every game is the same for me. Pre-game, studying, game action, reaction, fan shots, celebration. And perhaps it's the losing team, you know, and that makes beautiful pictures too, right? Really emotional pictures if it's a big loss, you know. And I won't talk about the Mets right now. I know it's sensitive, a little too soon for some of you. I'm sorry. So sorry for the long answer. That was a ramble. Sorry, Neil.
What is the deciding factor on where you're positioning yourself? And that kind of, are you forecasting like, hey, I have a strong feeling this might be the shot I'm going for? How do you decide?
I mean, with this World Series, it was pretty easy after a walk-off grand slam, you know, like what else is going to happen? Or, sure, something else could happen, but, and then he was hot, and it was amazing that they kept pitching to him, honestly, but, but they did, they did do that. So, I mean, he continued to be hot, and and what a World Series he had. And then as things were winding down, it was like, okay, are we going to go back to Dodger Stadium for another game, or is this going to end here at Yankee Stadium? Well, it looked like it was pretty much going to end at Yankee Stadium. So my plan was, if it ends at Yankee Stadium, I'm going to be ready. Where am I going to be standing? Where is my best chance to get a clean shot of Freddie Freeman? So obviously not this one, but I lined myself up for the end of that game to be looking right at first base with the right lens so that he, you know, and I pictured him throwing his hands up, not that that was too hard to figure out what he was going to do, and it happened exactly the way, you know, I thought it was going to. And again, it's also knowing the game. So he threw up his hands, he celebrated, you have a few shots of that. The scrum happens, you have 2 seconds before TV cameras and everybody else is running out onto the field. So your shots of real emotion happen fast, 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 that are clean and then not clean anymore. Yeah.
Did you intentionally frame the pitcher in the bottom corner?
Oh, yeah, so all of this certainly was intentional, making sure that we had the World Series as part of that, like, you know, framing that shot. And of course, it's a different picture if it's not, this is not at Dodger Stadium, because then you don't have all those fans. You have all these New Yorkers going, you know, like they're happy. Oh, keeping him in.
Yes,
Yeah, that's not the picture, but yes, keeping him in is absolutely purposeful. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have a process by which you go through when you decide to put it in color or make it a black and white picture?
Mostly I keep everything in color. I mean, occasionally, like I might look at something as a black and white, or, you know, Neil, I think, could really speak to that more. He does more of that and like does black and white. For the most part, I'm keeping my pictures in color. Just very, very seldom am I changing something to a black and white.
I would love to hear you say that.
I really never thought about it until I have a wonderful assistant who does, she's computer literate where I'm semi-literate. And she started showing me how some of the pictures that I liked in color would look even better in black and white. I've seen enough photography to know that you could do it, but I didn't know it was worth even playing with how beautifully some of the black and whites turn out from what essentially is a color shoot. You're shooting in color.
It certainly, you get to your subject faster. I mean, it definitely cleans up some noise that, you know, that maybe you don't want, or distractions, and you get to your subject faster. So certainly, in some of your most beautiful pictures in black and white, I think really, you know,
Well, the
makes
picture,
sense.
the picture I talked about the horse that was in last place, that's my favorite picture from the year that I shot. I'm going to make sure that that's published in black and white in the book I'm doing, because it looks so much better.
Yeah.
Sure.
For me, it's I think it's important to show that whatever job you're going for, or whatever your assignment you're looking for, is showing that viewer that you can handle whatever it takes. You can handle this assignment. So it's not the who, it's the what. It doesn't need to be Muhammad Ali. It doesn't need to be Freddie Freeman. It doesn't need to be professional sports. It needs to be great pictures. If you're trying to get a job with Getty or a wire service, they don't care that it's professional sports. They care that you know how to shoot, you know how to chase light, you know how to frame and compose, you know how to do all things a sports photographer, and that you know how to do action and reaction. So showing the work and showing your best work. You know, so many times we get excited because we have a famous player, but they're just standing there on a field. I mean, the first time I shot a professional baseball game, you know, I took so many pictures of baseball players just standing there, like a tree coming out of a field. Like, it's not a picture. Because it's a famous player, it means nothing. And it's really the pictures that should drive the portfolio, not who it is. Like, don't get excited. You don't need to be on a professional. Most of my career, my success was going back to grassroots and away from professional baseball. Yeah, we're showing professional baseball here, but showing beautiful light and showing game action and where you can get access. I mean, I can still stand in foul territory at a high school game. Yes, I'm risking my life, but I have access to shoot wherever I want to shoot, you know, for those games. So to me, it's showing your best pictures, showing that you can do the work, and then the more breadth of work that you have. If you have great portraits, you show your great portraits, show your action, your reaction. And if you can shoot multiple sports and show that you can handle any assignment with multiple sports, that's going to certainly help you get more opportunities. Did that answer the question, or did I miss it? Yeah. You want to hear from Neil? What do you think?
I think you answered it perfectly. I don't have anything to add, really. I mean, I can't think of anything that would make.
And have a website. It's not just Instagram. Maybe they'll start by looking
Yeah.
at Instagram first, but
I know one thing I can just say. You'd be amazed how many photographers would show up at Sports Illustrated. I was a picture editor briefly at the National when we published for 2 years a daily sports newspaper. And when we're looking to hire photographers, the portfolios that I saw, some of them were really, they must have gone to the wrong place because they were meant for National Geographic or for, you know, for Vogue. I mean, people show me beautiful pictures, or they were Ansel Adams kind of pictures. I needed someone who could photograph the ninth inning of a baseball game in the rain when it's drizzling and not miss the play that wins or loses the game, the football, the winning touchdown. So the portfolio has to be tailored to the job you're looking to get. Otherwise,
Right.
very artistic, beautiful photographs of flowers are not something the picture editor at Sports Illustrated was looking for. He's looking for somebody who knows how to photograph a double play or a play at home plate. Thank you.